Awesome. Welcome everyone to the Dad Cartel. Today I'm joined by Mike Medina. Mike has been a previous guest today, but we're also joined by his daughter Celeste, who he talked about quite a bit last time, and been following their journey on Instagram and seeing their highlight reels. And it's awesome to see you guys out there in the mats. So welcome, guys.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, this one, I think we talked about a little bit, Mike. We wanted to make this one more focused on martial arts. There's just so much that we can cover. You guys are like my favorite kind of people to talk to, right? It's the jiu-jitsu people and people just in general that are interested in martial arts. So let's just jump right in. Tell me about, how did your martial arts journey start? Mike, we'll start with you, and then Celeste, if you can kind of tell us a little bit about how your dad got you into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, so for me, fighting was kind of a way of life where I grew up. I grew up in Hawaii, and I tell everybody fighting in Hawaii is like football, like it is here in Texas. Mm-hmm. So it was just a way of life, right? So that's kind of how I initially got into it. I wrestled in high school also, and then once I joined the Marines, I joined their pancration fight team, which was simply like MMA with no face shots. Mm-hmm. Right? So it was just all body shots and stuff like that. From there, I started to train outside of the Marine Corps. I had a friend of mine who actually lives down the street from me. He was like, "Hey, I got this MMA gym that I've been training at." I went there for 2 weeks. I took my first MMA fight on 2 weeks' notice and rolled right into MMA from there. And then after that, I did pretty good. I actually really enjoyed MMA a lot. You know, it was a good way for me to get some aggression out inside the military and outside of the military. Yeah. After, I stumbled into jiu-jitsu, and I just fell in love with it. And I realized that it was a weakness in my game, the ground game. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to dedicate this year just to jiu-jitsu. And I tell everybody, because they see me now competing at the World Championship and Pan American Championship, and they're like, "You must have been doing this forever." And I'm like, "No, man, I was like 27 years old. I went to my first Naga tournament. I literally handed the ref my gi and belt in the plastic and had him help me put it on, and I took double gold." So that's how I got started. And then, so Celeste and I, we've been together for 5 years, because a lot of people don't know that she's actually my stepdaughter.
Yeah.
And then I introduced her to jiu-jitsu, like I said, 5 years ago. And how was your first experience with it?
So it was like seeing him practice, and then I was like, okay, can I try? So I started trying it out, and then it went to the point where you get your first belt, you could quit. So I quit after, but he was like, okay, you have to tell your coaches that you want to quit. I was like, no, I'm okay. So I stuck with it. It was pretty fun. My first competition, I was very nervous, but I was lucky to have him in my corner.
Yeah.
And helping me out. And now I'm where I am, a yellow belt, and I love it.
Awesome. Congrats. I saw that. That was pretty recent, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Congrats. That's a cool story, man. It's so important. What do you guys think martial arts has taught you?
Well, for me, martial arts was just an extra catalyst to the discipline that I already had, right? So, but one of the other things that it taught me was it gave me a way to continue to serve my community and give to other people. So the younger white belts that come in, I really love to grab a fresh white belt who looks at all these big athletes and he's a little intimidated. And I'm like, "Hey, come here, man. I'm not here to hurt you, right? I'm here to make sure that you can come back every week, tell your friends to come," and things like that. So that's personally what it gave me. What about you?
With me, it gave me strength, not being lazy, to never give up and all that type of stuff, to keep moving. When you fall, just come back up. You train on Monday.
Yeah.
There's a rule here called mandatory Mondays. So it doesn't matter how good or how bad the competition went. It doesn't matter if you're traveling. No matter what, we are in practice on Monday.
That's awesome. That's and you guys said a lot of really great things. The taking the white belt and then, kind of showing them, this isn't as scary as you may think it is. Don't get overwhelmed by the fact that you're seeing these really weird, complex, what might seem really complex moves, because the secret is that no one really knows everything, right? You may know a little bit about each move, but there's so many variations and so many different kind of versions of each move that you're never really going to perfect all of them. I've yet to meet one person that has perfected every single kind of position. There's maybe an outlier like Gordon Ryan, who's probably very good everywhere, but there's not a ton of those people, right? But the showing up on Monday, I love that, right? If you get beat up or if you do great, just show up no matter what, right? You should still be going to the gym and training and trying to get better, because there's always something to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. I consider myself pretty decent at the sport, and there's so much I don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that I'm constantly trying to level up to. So
yeah,
I love having that challenge of continuous growth no matter what. And so many people think like, so I've been training for 10 years. I'm a brown belt. I'm sure black's coming at some point in time, right? And I think a lot of people think like black belt's the end, but really it's just the beginning, of what you can do. And so that excites me. And so jiu-jitsu is just like, it helps continue to keep me motivated.
Yeah, no, I love what you said there. Everyone, I get that question too, and I'm at a purple belt, and they're like, "When are you going to get your black belt?" I'm like, honestly, I don't care. It's not like it really, to me, it's symbolic of all the hard work you put in, but other than that, it doesn't necessarily mean like a certain skill level, right? It means you've achieved a certain amount of skill, but as you guys know, there's levels to each belt, and it's hard to describe that to people. Like, a competition blue belt can mop the floor with, like, say, a hobbyist brown belt, right? And there's different levels in each of the belts, but it's hard to know that other than someone that's actively practicing, explaining it to you, or you feel it, right? The best way to understand it is when you feel it, and you're like, what was that? Like that was something I've never experienced before.
One of the things that I really wanted us to touch on during this conversation was, that what it takes to actually be like a young student athlete, right? Yeah. And I think it is one of the most important things that we can do for our kids. So when Celeste spoke earlier, one of the things that I told her was, hey, if jiu-jitsu is not for you, we're going to find out, right? But no matter what, you have to do something. So since she chose nothing at the time, I chose jiu-jitsu for her, and her exit out of jiu-jitsu was, okay, you can quit jiu-jitsu if you have a plan to do something else. However, there's a couple milestones we have to hit. One, you have to get your first belt promotion. So you're going to train until you get your first belt promotion, and you're going to compete one time. So you're going to get a little bit of taste of it, and then actually, if you want to step away, I'll let you step away. But I did tell her, if you're going to step away, you're going to walk out there in front of your whole team and say, hey, this is not for me. And thank you guys for everything. Thank them for everything that they instilled into you. And I just think that's good life lessons. So that was her way out. Clearly she hasn't taken it, because we're 4 or 5 belts deep, and 40 medals later, she's got a NAGA championship belt. Like, there's no slowing down for us. In fact, we're competing every single weekend for the month of January.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys that question, because I've seen so many of those highlight reels and so many of those podium pictures, and like, are you guys aiming for every weekend or every week and just being consistent? What's the goal for the year?
So I think we have separate goals, right? So what's your goals?
To show that I deserve my belt and I could do more than just not compete.
Yeah. And for me, I'm chasing the world championship, right? So I've got 5 medals at the world championship, and every single one is a bronze. Yeah. So for me, I'm very heavy in the IBJJF circuit. All I compete is really IBJJF, and it's just collecting points. So I'm traveling and competing. I'm at every major tournament there is, and it's good. And the hard work pays off, because the gym awarded me, competitor of the year. I won the Apex Award for hitting the podium at the major tournament, so worlds and pans and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's good, and one of the things that I talk to a lot of the parents, because I sit on the sideline, right, during her class. And one of the things that I get asked a lot is like, hey, how do I get my kid to be like your kid, right? And I'm like, well, it's very easy, right? And one of the things that you got a lot of pushback on our last podcast, right? Because he's probably mean, his kids don't love him and all this stuff. Yeah. And it couldn't be further from the opposite. And even Celeste has had moments to where, I don't feel good today. And I'm like, well, that's okay, because it's a 15-minute drive to practice. So you can take that whole 15 minutes to not feel good. You're going to practice, right?
Yeah.
And it's because her goals were she wanted to compete, she wanted to win. So as a dad, I hold her accountable for her goals. And we all need people like that in our life.
Absolutely.
Right? You can do that for us. And so the parents will be like, well, little Johnny's tired after school. And I tell Celeste, it's like clockwork here, man. I'm like, hey, it's 15 minutes to practice. Go to sleep now. I'll turn the radio off. Whatever you have to do to get your little beauty sleep. But we are going to chase the excellence that you have set out to achieve, right?
Yeah.
For people to think like, oh, his kids probably hate him or whatever, not even close to the case.
Yeah, what a powerful lesson to learn, right? And it's a valuable skill. As you're an adult. I'm an adult. I wish someone had told me that when I was younger. Of do the things that you don't want to do, but will benefit you later, right? And it may suck at the time, and guess what? We're all going to do things that kind of suck throughout life, but you get them done anyways, because then that opens up so many different opportunities for excellence, right? That you talked about, and there's no other way to get there other than the struggle, right? I have it anyways.
One of my biggest fears. Sorry, I'm recovering from a chest cold. One of my biggest fears was just like in life, I didn't just want to like wake up, go to work, come home and die. Right. So like I wanted to have, and I do have like all these goals to accomplish, and jiu-jitsu was just one of them. And I think that I'm able to set the example for her because she sees me. We're married, right? My wife and I were married, so we have a marriage to uphold. We have a house to uphold. We have other kids that we got to take care of. But like, it doesn't matter because we'll sacrifice sleep or whatever we need to accomplish our other goals within our relationship.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's super important that we have that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does that mean to you right now as your dad tells you those things of like, don't worry about it. You get 15 minutes on the way there. What does that mean to you, and what's your take on that? I'm curious.
It's like,
She's probably used to it now.
yeah.
For sure.
Get 15 minutes of rest and then you're up and going.
Yeah, I mean that's again. I think that's fantastic. We talked a little bit about the competing. What are some big takeaways that you guys take from both the winning and the losing? I think there's a lot to learn from both.
Go ahead.
I really don't like losing. When I lose, I get mad and I start to cry. But it's like when I win, I feel something just got lifted off my shoulder, and it feels happy stuff.
And for me, it sounds bad to say, right? But I expect to win at every single thing that I do. And so for me, I take losing very, very hard, but I sit back and I find the positivity and the growth from the loss. Right. So like there's never bitterness or animosity to losing. And I even tell my wife, like, losing at Worlds this time, I sat there and sometimes I lose and I'm like, you know what? That guy's not really better than me. Right. Yeah. I was just off today. And this was a humbling experience where I had to say, you know what? He was better. And he's probably going to be better tomorrow. And the next day, like I got outperformed, for this year. So it's to me, it's good. I think competition breeds excellence in everything. Right. It doesn't matter if it's raising your kids and your kids having a controlled environment to compete in. I think it's great. There was a quote that was floating around. I want to say probably about 6 months ago, where it's like, strong men create easy times create men. Well, we're successful in business, we're successful in life. And I asked my wife, I was like, how do we create that toughness when we could take our kids to Hawaii tomorrow? Right. We live in a beautiful house. We drive nice cars. Our kids are in nice schools. Like, how do we do that? And one of the ways that we do that is the controlled chaos that we control, right? With our gym schedule or training, or with my son in football when he was playing football or wrestling, it's avenues like that where you can still breed that toughness, even though you can create a positive and wonderful life to live. Not everybody has to hit that struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that the controlled kind of chaos, the controlled adversity, right? Because if you grew up in a very difficult circumstance, right, you would never want that for your kids, but there's ways to create it in environments like martial arts, right? Specifically, I think in jiu-jitsu or wrestling, any combat sport really, but it's so beneficial, right? And for me, I think I'll give you guys my take on it. I'm not as seasoned of a competitor as you guys, but when I go into the tournament or I compete at all, I go into it just like you, Mike. I go into it knowing that I'm going to win. That's the only result I see in my head. And I tell myself that as I'm training, and I won't enter a competition unless I'm going to give it the amount of attention that it deserves, right? Because we've all met those guys. I know I've trained with a lot of them that, you know, they're like, oh, I'm going to join this. I'm going to compete at this tournament. And, you know, I just made the cutoff. I didn't plan on doing it, but I'm going to jump in and see how it goes. Like, if you're going into it with the mindset of I'll see how it goes, you're going to lose. Like 100% of the time, you're going to lose. So for me, it's always I'm going into it prepared as I possibly can make it, right, or be. And then, you know, the lessons I try to take away from it, it's kind of like you, Mike. If I lose, I'm basically analyzing that loss for, you know, as long as I basically can do it until I figure out, you know, what I did wrong. And even when I win, it's like, was the win as good as it could have been, right? Was it a submission? Was it not? And, you know, I tear that apart, right? Because from that is the growth, right? The analyzing and the scrutiny that you put on yourself, that's where you get that real growth. So I love that. I love that you guys are so active. And definitely.
Yeah, you know, it starts in the training room. One of the things that we often talk about is practice with intent, because some people can go to practice for 5 days a week and not get out of it what someone gets in on 2 days, you know, because 100%. You have direct action and implementation of what you're trying to do. And so one of the struggles that Celeste had in the beginning was like, I don't want to hurt this person, or, you know, she's a little bit better than, you know, that specific training partner for that day. So she'll be a little bit lighter. And in me helping her understand, like, you're actually helping that partner, right, by giving everything that you can to them, right? Yeah. And so that was a little hurdle for her in the beginning. But she's a separate animal, man. I tell everyone, like, you don't just wake up and get as good as Celeste does overnight. I mean, she only has about 3 years on the mat. But one of the things that I point out to people is, you know, she competes against another kid that goes to just kids class 1 hour a day, 4 days a week. Celeste is doing private lessons with a female world champion at 4:30. She's in kids class at 5:30. She's in adult class at 6:30, and she's in competition class at 7:30, and that's why she's yawning right now.
Yeah.
So she's putting what some kids put in a week. She's putting that in a day.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it goes back to work ethic, right? And what does she want to put in? And she gets enjoyment out of it. Seems like, right? I don't think you'd do it if you didn't enjoy it. So yeah, no, that's super powerful. So tell me.
I don't think she's ever been like, "Can we please not go today?" I don't think I've ever heard that from her.
That's awesome. Who are your favorite martial artists right now? We can just cover jiu-jitsu, but like who are you guys looking at in the jiu-jitsu scene and say that, you know, that's someone I can learn from, or that's someone that's doing it at a level that I want to do it?
100%. Mona Bailey, Ange Bailey, and Gianna Bailey.
Yeah.
So Mona Bailey is our residential adult female world champion. These Bailey girls, I've known them since they were probably 10 or 11 or 12 years old. And they compete at the highest level. They're all over the world. They're just amazing. They really set the standard in our gym. So that's great that she looks at them like that. For me, man, I study a lot of guys. There's a guy out there. I don't know if you know who he is. His name's Eric Muniz. He's an ultra heavyweight guy like me, but he's got a super great guard game and plays very well off his back. And so for someone like me, who's very much a pressure pass and a top playing guy, I learn a lot from watching his game.
Yeah. He's an animal. I mean, he's had some great matches with Marigali, and I love those. Granted, I'm not a huge. I personally don't like the gi as much. I do practice both. I think it's about 50-50 for me. But watching those guys and the technical level of the gi, man, it's amazing. Especially like you said, the bigger guys being able to move as quickly as they do and as agile as they are. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I train at Aries here in Goodyear in Phoenix in Arizona, and man, I get to see some super high level people. One woman who stands out to me is Elizabeth Clay. She trains with us, and man, she's a killer. And just seeing her and the new wave of like, I think for a long time, jiu-jitsu was very much like the male athletes, right? They're the exciting ones, and there wasn't as much of an attention on female grapplers. But I think that's completely starting to change now. You're starting to see this big following of female grapplers, and it's not out of novelty. It's, you know, their skill set is so elite now, man. And I had a funny kind of I got to see something really funny from far. I took a round off, you know, whatever. That part kind of sucks, but I was taking a round off, and I get to watch, you know, from the sides, and you guys probably know this just as much as I do, but typically you don't, if you're a white belt, lower belt, you don't ask the black belts to roll, right? You wait for them to ask you. Some gyms are different, some are, you know, more flexible with it, but there's a little bit of a respect thing, right? They do this for a living, especially people that do it professionally. You don't ask them to roll unless, you know, you kind of know them, or, you know, it's something that's acceptable. But I got to see this white belt ask Elizabeth to roll, and she, you know, she's nice, so she did it, and it was a white belt, bigger guy. He kind of had this demeanor a little bit that it looked like he thought he was going to do much better than, you know, anyone would do with her. But, you know, it was really funny to just see her like just put it on him, humble him, and he walked away, and they slapped hands, and it was all good. But the look on his face of like, oh my God, what was that?
I love it, man. I love it. There's a good chance if you walk into our gym and you get one of our girls, from adults and kids, like you're going to be hurting. Yeah. Our girls are fierce. Our kids, our female kids, they're phenomenal. They compete better than the boys, I think, personally. And then when you look at, you know, the Bailey girls that are in our gym, if anybody competes more than me in our gym, it's them. And I compete a lot. And so it's awesome to see the growth. And I'll be honest, I could be going in the finals at the World Championship, and I would rather sit back and watch her compete. Yeah. Because watching her compete with other girls, it's phenomenal. Yeah. It takes it kind of personal when she competes with boys. I don't think she uses the boys very often.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So that's a humbling experience for sure.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there. Awesome. There's some famous, iconic, I think, martial arts father and daughter duos, right? One that comes to mind, at least in the jiu-jitsu world, you know, besides the Gracies, I'd say, is Megaton and Mackenzie Dern, right? They stand out as, you know, these badass, you know, world champion killers, right? What do you guys think of that? And, you know, is there anything you guys take away from any other father-daughter kind of duos that you see? It doesn't have to be in jiu-jitsu.
So probably not. She probably doesn't see it as much as I do, but I definitely take a lot away from it. And so Andre Galvao, his daughter,
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
she's amazing, you know, and Andre's amazing. He's a legend in the sport. Sitting back and watch them, but I get to watch even in my own gym, you know, Professor Jared in my gym and Professor Chad Robichow and their sons, watching them grow up. So I get to see them set the example. But I also click with some other, you know, parents in our gym whose daughters train. So I have a friend of mine, Casey, he trains in our gym, and his daughter Charlotte just got her orange belt, and she's Celeste's toughest training partner. And so Casey and I get to go compete on the circuit together, and our daughters are with us at all these events, and we get to see them compete together, and we share stories, we share technique together. It's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool to see. I mean, you see I'm sure you see a lot more of it, but you see the parents that, you know, they'll do the basics. They'll get their kids there, and they'll drop them off, and, you know, they'll just kind of watch or sit on the side, go on their phone, whatever it is. That's at least they're getting them in there, right? And then there's the parents that will watch intently, and they'll say, you know, they'll talk kind of they may not know what they're looking at, but then they'll kind of talk through it with their kids after the class. And then there's parents like you, Mike. I think that you're a competitor. You can speak to these things. You can kind of steer in the right directions. You can talk in more detail and techniques and really kind of drive forward. You know, if that's something that Celeste wants to do, which clearly it is. So it's interesting, but again, there's levels to it, and I've seen that, and it's great to see any of it. But I think, you know, for me, it's always seeing the parents that really get involved, and you can see it in the kids. They don't push their kids. They ask them, "Are you interested in this? Do you still care about this?" That part to me is beautiful, man. I think of my own daughter, and my wife gives me kind of grief about it. She's like, "Don't force her to do jiu-jitsu." I'm like, I'm not going to force her. She's going to learn a certain baseline of how to protect herself, right? And, you know, I need to think through what that is, but I'm not going to, you know, try to live vicariously through her and try to make her a world champion and these kinds of things. If she wants that, then, you know, great. I totally support that. But, you know, that's something I'm definitely looking forward to navigating.
Yeah, I think for her, like if she told me right now, like she was just done, I would probably let her walk away from the sport and hold the door open for her to always return, right? Just because she's accomplished so much in such a short amount of time, right? And there's so much more room for her to grow. But I wouldn't let her walk away and just come home and sit on the couch and shove down chips and do nothing. Like that didn't happen. So, you like this, you like doing this, so let's go ahead and do that. And it's important that parents understand that, because I think we're in a generation where parents, they're so afraid to like grab a hold of their kid and get them on the right track. Like my kids can't go off the right track because I will grab you and put you on the right track. And I see a lot of this around, to where parents are afraid to, or like, oh, he doesn't want to go to school today, so I'm going to not let him. And I'm like, no, you're going to get your, what up, and you're going to drag it all the way to school, and if you're tired, wait till you come home, so we live that type of lifestyle. But you know what? People think, I hear it all the time. I hear it from my wife's family too. Like, he's super tough on the kids. But here's my kids, right? We have a 17-year-old who's got straight A's, who's joining the Marines. He's in great physical shape, and he did good enough on the ASVAB that he could basically select whatever job that he wants, right? He's respectful when he leaves the house, and he represents us very well, right? And I got this freak of nature right here, right, who's also A's and B's, who's like a second mother in our home. I can leave her home with our 1-year-old. She's on top of diapers and feeding. Like, like, my kids just have this inherent responsibility to do great things, right? There's a standard of excellence, and even our group chat, right? I named our group chat Family of Excellence, because everything you do in life is worth overdoing, right? So there's no cutting corners, and you find that you can't go to jiu-jitsu class and cut corners, because you're going to get beat down and dog walk the whole day, right? But that starts in our home, right? Because Celeste knows, if it's her turn to do dishes and it's midnight and I go walk over there and the dishes are still dirty, guess who's waking up to do them, right? Because you did it right the first time. So we implement all these things at home, and it just transitions well into sports, but it also transitions well as they grow up in life, right? Because you and I as adults, we know my day is filled with things that I have to do that I don't want to do, right? I have to do them. And now because of that, we live the life that we get to live. And so when you can implement that in your kids, and they're not getting that for the first time when they're 19 or 20 years old, you're actually setting them up for success.
Yeah, completely agree with you. What's that like for you, Celeste? Tell us a little bit about that.
It's pretty normal to me. It's like you have to do it the first time instead of doing it last minute. Like, if he says, can you do the dishes, this, like clean the counter and stuff before I get home, it's done immediately. Get it done before so you could relax and just watch your kids.
Yeah, what a simple idea, right? Just do it as you're told, and then it's just done, right?
Yeah, and I hear in even in my own gym, man, I hear some of the kids talk to their parents, and Celeste will just look at me like, I could never say that to you, right? Like, and I'm like, you're right, you couldn't. But no, we definitely instill when I ask you to do something, right? It's really me telling you. I'm just giving you the courtesy of asking it in the form of a question, right? But I want it done now, not when you want to, right? And I think I get that from the military, right? And but all of my kids, we have 6 kids total combined, and every single one of them operates that way. And man, I just love the last podcast we did, because people were nailing you and I to the cross, man.
And you know what? That's okay, because doing one of the big things that I always talk about is, like, doing the right thing doesn't have to be the popular thing, right?
No,
being a good person, even if you're the only one doing it, it's worth doing, right? And doing things the right way is always the right thing to do, right? So yeah, I was completely okay with it, right? And we talk about these times when, right now it's the time of mediocrity. It's the time of accepting substandard, right? Substandard performance, substandard things of yourself, in all aspects of life. And, it's so easy to dominate right now, if just by being, not even excellent. I mean, you can be good and dominate, but if you strive for excellence, you're going to crush it, right? And you guys are definitely seeing that. And, you know, I think a lot of people that listen and think how we do are seeing that in their lives. So happy to upset more people.
Yeah. And I love it. Any chance I can get to grab a hold of one of the other kids in the gym, you know, and just give them a little tidbit of the same thing, right? We have this kid, Joseph. I love the kid. He's a good kid, right? And he's got some tendencies that he could get rid of in the gym. And one of the things is me as a brown belt in the gyms, I pull him aside. I'm like, hey, you need to do this with intent and with purpose. Like some kids look at this, I have to be here for an hour. Some kids look at it as like, man, I get to be there for an hour, right? So let's maximize that hour. And, you know, and just being able to like kind of give some little tidbits to him, you know, watching his game grow. Like, I love that. And I really, that, you know, today, Celeste is one of the first kids, if not the only kid, to get on the mat during adults class. And like, it's like setting that example is just, it's normal. Like this, that's what she does.
Mindset's so powerful, right? And we talk about that. One thing that, you know, circling back a little bit to the competition part, one thing that I make a big point, and I think you alluded to it a bit, Mike, is visualization, right? Before I step on the mats, I'm visualizing myself, especially when I'm coming up on a competition, that I'm stepping onto the mats at a competition, right? The round, everything I'm doing is with intent, right? But what do you guys think about visualization and how you use it? Not only start with jiu-jitsu, but even in life, right?
What do you think about visualizing your competition before you do it?
Good, because if I don't, I feel like I'm just going to lose immediately, that I don't work hard. But if I visualize it, I'm like, I could do this. I have to be aggressive. I'm faster. I'm stronger, and I got this.
Nice.
That's just her mental check. And what I love it because I tell my wife all the time, it's very common for Celeste to not do so good her first match, right? But every single match after that, she's dominant. And so this tournament, she made a comment to me about, I'm changing that this time. And man, she went out there and dominated and got the finish in under a minute. You know, it just set the tone for the whole day. And you see, I sent you the reel, right? She came home with, you know, 3 gold medals and 2 silvers at one tournament. So I love that for her. For me, I think that it's just in my nature, and I really attested to the Marines, right? The Marines just taught me, like, hey, we're just better than everybody, right? So because of that, you have to act accordingly and always have a plan. But the plan is to win, right? And so one of the things that I tell even the kids, I don't have a plan B in life a lot because it distracts from plan A, and I don't plan on losing at plan A. You know, to see my kids adopt the same thing, man, it's just like it's emotional for me because it's like I know my kids are going to win in life. Like I have no doubts.
Yeah, I think as a dad, right, that's one of those. At least I'm obviously a new dad, but thinking through it, like I just want to make sure that I've taught my daughter as much as I possibly can, right, and get her as set up as I can for life. And, you know, seeing as you see those things, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of it, right? Seeing those behaviors of this is a disciplined young woman. This is, you know, a young lady who is respectful and learns and really cares about others and shows these things that you're teaching her. I'm sure that gives you a sense of, man, I'm doing my job, right? That's a huge win, I would imagine. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the things that, you know, we talk about is how many parents out there are telling their kids you can do anything you want in life? Well, how many of you are doing that? Like you as adults, my peer, like what are you doing that would even make your kid even believe that?
Right.
Are you doing that? And so for me, it's great because me and mom, we both graduated college, right? We own a business. I mean, we're up every. Have you ever seen me take a day off from the gym? You know, like we just don't. We don't try to pass a message to our children that we're not actively living, right? So I think that that's super important, and I think that that's where she gets a lot of it from. And my son also, you know, like I came to his life 5 years ago as well, right? And that boy never had any thought about joining the Marine Corps, right? Ever until I come around. And when I come around, it's that strict firmness, discipline, attention to detail, not accepting mediocrity, everything, but not just telling him that. He sees me live it, you know, and he's like, he's gravitated to, he said, man, I want that. I want some of what they can offer me.
Yeah. Yeah. Living by example, right? And, in business world or tech world, they'll say like eating your own dog food, right? You're showing people that I'm not. It was a good example of that was Michael Jordan, right, in basketball, where he's a famous example of saying like I don't ask people to do more than I would ever do. I don't ask people to do things that I wouldn't do myself. And I think that's a great way to lead, right? And you see it in jiu-jitsu a lot. I have our professor Cashinho, he's great on that, right? He tells us push, push, push. He'll push us to our limits, but he's out there competing. He's competed at the highest levels. He's won at Worlds. He's done all these things. He'll show up. He'll coach when he needs to, but he's there. He's like you can't tell that guy he hasn't lived everything he's asking you to do yourself. So with those moments where he's pushing and I'm like I'm about to puke right now in practice, I'm like I know he's done it himself, or he's right next to me sometimes even doing it too while he's coaching the rest of us. So I think that's such a powerful message to send to your students, to your kids, to anyone in your life.
Yeah, we have Professor Jared. He's he really running the show at our gym. He's the guy's amazing. First of all, he's an amazing dad. He's an amazing husband, right? And he's amazing at jiu-jitsu. And he competes. He puts himself on the front lines. And even if maybe he has a little nagging injury, right? And we're all at Worlds in Vegas, and he unfortunately can't compete. He's on a flight. He's there. He's helping weight cuts. He's doing everything. And I'll tell you what, there's not a single person in our gym that can outwork him.
Yeah.
Right? So when he's the one telling you, hey, we're doing 45 minutes of 6-minute rounds, no rounds off, he's not taking a round off. And man, he's 170 pounds, maybe.
Yeah.
And he makes me feel like he parked a bus on me when he's on top. So he's a beast. He's a monster.
That's always the worst, right? Where you're like 150-pound guy or something like that just mops the floor with you. It's hard to explain to anyone that hasn't felt it. I try to explain to my wife. I'm like, I show her some of my training partners, and I'm like, that guy could beat me up like badly. And she's like, how? And I'm like, you don't understand. Like,
Mikey Musumeci, he's a tiny guy, but man, he'll rip your legs right off. And for me, I'm 6'3", 250 pounds, right? I work out every day. I'm in the gym. I'm training every day, right? And then I get these little muscle hamsters, man, and they can put it on me.
Yeah, absolutely. Celeste, I have a question for you. I was thinking through, you're definitely an outlier, I'm sure, amongst all your friends. What do your friends think about how you train and what you do, and do they even know what jiu-jitsu is, or do you mostly hang out with other kids that do jiu-jitsu?
Last year in school, everyone's like, how's jiu-jitsu? Is it fun? Like, is it weird? Is it like, what does it do? I was like, well, it's fun, of course. You do this and it will help you one day when you get older.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to compete because you get that challenge that you never have. And then sometimes when I can, like at jiu-jitsu class, everyone's like, are you orange belt? I'm like, no, I'm just yellow. They're like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. One day you're going to get promoted and you're going to feel like what I feel.
I think it's pretty cool for her too, because she does pro fights, right?
Yeah.
So she's on an event this weekend called Submission Hunter Pro. Big old fight poster and walkout music and smoke and flames and all that. And so she actually wanted to do homeschool this year because she wanted to be able to dedicate more time to jiu-jitsu, right? And a lot of the stuff at public school was just kind of sucking the life out of her, with like kids with drama and stuff like that. So we removed all that, and it's been super great for her. But when she was in public school and she's like, hey, I got tickets to my fight if you want to buy them, and the kids are like, what? Tickets to your fight? She's like, hey, look, I'm on this big poster, right? So it's super cool for her to be able to have that and go there too. But I definitely think that we have a great group of kids at our gym. Celeste is one of them. And man, I'm willing to bet they're setting the example and leading by example in their schools and in their communities as well.
Yeah, I think that goes such a long way, right? That saying of you're the average of the 5 people that you associate with most or you're closest to, right? That goes such a long way. So it's great to see, right, when kids surround themselves with other kids that are like-minded and have similar types of mindsets and goals. And adults the same way, right? You hate to see that person that has all this potential and they're trying to do their best and they're killing it, but then they hang out with people that are just dragging them down, and you want to say, man, just get away from that person. They're going to pull you down. You're going to be you have so much more potential than that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I always hope my kids will see is as they get older, like it's okay to tell somebody, "Hey, you just don't fit in my goals anymore," and
Yeah.
like that's okay. It's okay, and maybe it hurts their feeling, maybe it won't. But hopefully, what it makes them do is sit back and self-reflect and get them back on the right track. And they reach out to you a year or two later, and they're like, "Hey, I got this great book. I'd love your advice on it," or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes a ton of sense, and I've experienced that, right? You outgrow certain friends. I think we've all have, and sometimes you do circle back with those friends, or you see them from afar, right? And you're like, wow, they actually stepped it up a notch. So it's a difficult conversation, but life's full of those, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Nice. So I think we covered quite a bit, guys. I mean, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you guys want to say? I mean, Mike, I'd love your advice as a dad, as my little girl starts growing up. I know she's only 9 months old, but what should I be considering as a dad who's going to put his daughter in martial arts, and what's the biggest lesson that you think I should be thinking about?
So for me, what I would say is that your kids are always watching, and
Yeah.
you can't fake it to your kids.
Yeah.
Like if I'm sitting here telling Celeste, "Hey, you need to be putting in, X amount of hours in the gym, and you need to, try to do this and try to do that." I never want her to have the ability to sit back and look at me and be like, "Well, why aren't you?" Like, so I think it's to always remember that your kids are watching. And one of the other things, and I talk to a lot of my friends about this and about their kids, is I never want to tell anybody how to parent, right?
Mhm.
But you also have to remember that your child doesn't really understand what's best for them.
Mhm.
Right? You do as the parent. And
Mhm.
so sometimes they're not going to want to go to practice, right? Sometimes they're not going to want to go train, or they're not going to want to go compete. And one of the things that I like to remind kids, especially in team sports, right, is that you have an inherent responsibility to your teammates to be at practice, whether you want to be there or not.
Yeah.
Take something like football. You think the quarterback's missing practice because he doesn't feel good? Like, no, there is no practice without that guy. And
Yeah.
so when you hold that standard to yourself and your kids get to see it, it's a lesson that you don't have to teach because you live it, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that I would love for you to know as your beautiful daughter gets older, and just for all the other parents out there. You can't lie to these kids.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I appreciate that. Celeste, what do you think anyone that's aspiring to be as great as you are right now, and that's striving for the similar goals that you're striving for, what advice would you give them?
I would give them is to work harder if you feel like you need to. If you feel like you're failing in life, just work harder. Feel like you need to push yourself to the pace to do more things.
That's great advice. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you two, rooting for you guys as always, and love to talk to you guys in the future, man. We'll just keep interacting, and appreciate the time, and best of luck on all your goals. I know you guys are going to crush it, so you guys don't need the luck.
Absolutely, and thanks for the platform. And again, I just want the parents out there to know, like, it's okay to push your kids to their thresholds. It's good to know where your limits are and kind of flirt with that line a little bit, because people don't often realize if you go just a little further, you're going to reach that success that you want to.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate the time, and have a great night.
All right, brother. Have a good one. Be safe on the mats.
Thanks, guys.